In the 70s, I briefly studied acting in Los Angeles with a teacher named Eric Morris. He used a certain interesting psychological method to get people to access characters that were very different from them, called subpersonalities. He had gotten that from a psychologist named Hal Stone. And when I was in LA, I studied with both of them, not very long, but for a little while. And I'm fascinated by that theory, which, well, from two different angles. One, I'm just fascinated by the psychology of it, that we have all of these different personalities living inside of us who are very different from what our everyday identity is. And we don't usually know about them. We're not really in touch with those energies. And actors have to access parts of their personalities and energies and um, when something happens when you do that, you suddenly unleash an energy you didn't know you had, and you suddenly start talking and moving and acting like somebody very different from you. And I really enjoyed doing that. And there were personalities that were extremely different from my usual measured, slightly intellectual, considered way of being. I found um, foreign accents. I found a clown or two. I found kids, children. I found all kinds of people, old men. And I was only in my 30s then. Now I really am an old man, but not the kind of old man that was coming out of me as a character. In any case, I found it um, a lot of fun to actually do that. But the reason I bring that up is we go through life, we have our objectives, we work on those objectives, and we take on an identity, and we think that's who we are, and we live a certain life, we have a role in our marriage, in our society, and in our business, but we're not that. We're not that role or those roles. People usually have somewhere between 8 and 12 very different personalities buried in their subconscious. And a movie was made about that in the 50s, Three Faces of Eve. They took a character and defined three very separate personalities, but it was based on somebody who had at least 10 or 12 or maybe more personalities that were very distinct. And some of them knew each other and some didn't. It was, I mean, it's kind of amazing. All of these um, personages living inside of us that don't see the light of day mostly, and the work that actors do to bring these things forth, um, Now, if you're not a pretty stable person, you could probably become schizophrenic. But there, and there have been people who take on a role, um, and once the movie is over, the play is over, they just can't give it up. Um, Depardieu did a role of Cyrano de Bergerac, and when the movie was finished, he found it almost impossible to relinquish that person, that personages, that character in himself. You you need a real stable psychology to be able to access these different parts of yourself, but they're there and they're there for everybody. And that's what's really interesting to me is we have people living inside of us who may have completely different objectives in life than we do. We know where we're going, we know what we want to do, and so on. They may actually want to sabotage that because that's not what they want to do. It's a fascinating picture. Um, in any case, sometimes a um, a an energy takes over masses of people at the same time. And this is where you get mob psychology. And the people that get swept up in it really don't know what happened to them. They can go crazy and they can lynch somebody and they hardly know who that person was. They were carried away by the energy of the crowd. We kind of have had that in the United States a little bit. Maybe the tide is turning. We're going to find a better energy, but a very negative, a very destructive energy has swept over the land. And it seems to be really trying to just wreak havoc, just destroy everything. And this is probably a subpersonality that has lived in the American psyche forever, but right now it has free reign. There are people trying to stop it, but there's a whole host of cowards in Congress who won't do anything. They're they know it's crazy. They know that it's extremely dangerous, and they're just sitting there praying the worst won't happen. And this is um, uh, it's almost like when one individual, for some unknown reason, decides to commit suicide. And if it happens in a large number of people, in the decisions they make of who they vote for, of what kind of laws they pass, of what kind of actions they take or don't take, it's got it's that individual destiny on a large scale. And what I hope is sanity will prevail. Now, I saw a story, I don't know if it's true, that Trump wanted the codes to the hydrogen bomb, and the general refused to give it to him because he felt that Trump was not stable. Well, we know Trump's not stable, but I don't know if that story is true. In any case, this is something that we legitimately worry about, that somehow There's a certain kind of insane energy that has risen in our midst and has taken the levers of power, and we are all in danger. What are we going to do? I mean, somehow we have to break the spell. We have, reasonable people have to start speaking up. And in order to do that, they're going to have to find their courage. They're going to have something very out of the ordinary for them. They've lived their lives being safe, and now they're going to have to be brave. We elected them to do the right thing. They have an obligation to the Constitution, but you you could worry that they won't do it. You could worry that they're just not up to the task. How do we get these people in this position? In any case, it's kind of like one personality with all of these energies just in turmoil inside them. And this particular kind of energy took hold of the United States and is just creating a huge train wreck. Well, I don't know why I'm talking about this tonight, but it's just in the air. And something reasonable people are going to have to come forward. But that's, I'm just one unknown person. But this is the kind of thinking, this is the kind of message that needs to be out there, needs to be spoken, needs to be discussed, and people need to not only think about it, then we need to act. So, as I always say, it's something to think about.